Hi everyone, my name is Karen, this is my channel RatherBeReading, and today I'm bringing to you my September wrap-up. September was a decent reading month, definitely an improvement over August. Things have improved a little bit and I've definitely been kind of on the upswing in the second half of the month. So as always, we will start off with my statistics for the month. So I read a total of 18 books in the month of September. That was made up of 14 novels, 3 children's novels, and 1 novella. I read 10 books in physical copy, 3 ebooks, and I listened to 5 audiobooks. And then excluding the audiobooks, I read 7 books that I owned and 6 were from the library. I read a total of 5,826 pages in the month of September, which averaged out to 194 pages per day, so just a little bit below that 200 page kind of average that I generally try to keep it at. So not too bad. The shortest book that I read was 29 pages. That was the novella. It was a very short little novella. And the longest book that I read was 559 pages. The highest star rating that I gave in September was a 4-star, but I did give 4 separate books 4 stars. However, the lowest star rating that I gave was a 1-star, unfortunately, and my average star rating for the month averaged out to 3.21 stars. So let's jump straight in now and talk about the 18 books. I'm going to try to go through these as quickly as possible because I didn't film a mid-month wrap-up, so I do need to talk about all 18 books. So I'm going to try to get through these as quickly as possible, so let's jump in. So the first book that I completed in the month of September was Fire Study by Maria V. Schneider. This is the 3rd book in the study series and the book that completes the original trilogy that formed. The original series was just a trilogy and then there were 3 books published later on from that. So I did read this book. I enjoyed this. I really enjoyed the main relationship in the series. I like the world a lot and all of the politics and all of that type of thing. I do think that this was maybe a bit slow in parts and maybe didn't need to be as long as what it was because it is a fairly chunky book. It's almost 450 pages. I thought maybe some of it could have been trimmed down. There are also, to me, no real surprises in the plot. Everything was fairly predictable, but I do generally just really enjoy this series, and in the end I gave this one 3.75 stars. Next, I read an ebook called Love Bites by Rachel C. Burke. This was a backlist Kindle book, but is also a book that I received from NetGalley for review. So this is a new adult/adult romance novel that's basically about a girl who sleeps with her best friend's boyfriend. And obviously through that has had a massive falling out with her friend, and we basically follow the plot a little while later after the main character has since broken up with this guy, the friend's previous boyfriend who she was since dating. They've now broken up and she's trying to get her life back together. I really liked that this book focused more on the friendship reconciliation rather than straight up with the romance. However, I really couldn't relate to the main character. I really didn't like her at all, and it was very cliche, and everything just really fell into the main character's lap. Like, you know, she talked about how she really wanted a job that was like better hours because she doesn't like getting up early or working long hours, and then of course a job like that falls into her lap, which I was just like, yeah, sure, we'd all like a job like that. That doesn't mean that it's super realistic. So in the end I gave that one 2.5 stars. It was just okay. I then listened on audio to Heretics Anonymous by Katie Henry. This one was narrated by Michael Crouch. This one I enjoyed a lot more than I expected. This is a YA contemporary. It basically follows a boy who goes to a new school, and it is a Catholic private school, and it's very like a strict kind of Catholic school, and he is an atheist. And one day in class this girl questions something that I think it's one of the nuns is talking about, and he thinks that he's found another atheist at the school. However, it turns out that she is herself actually a devout Catholic, and she invites him in the end to join this group called Heretics Anonymous that has lots of different people of different faiths. So we have the devout Catholic girl, we have the atheist boy, we have a gay Jewish boy, we have a girl who identifies as pagan. So there's lots of different representations in terms of that, which I really liked. This was also really comical. I really enjoyed that. And it really did just kind of, to me, the overall kind of feeling about the book was that it was all just really about tolerance and acceptance, and I really liked that. In the end, I enjoyed this a lot, and I gave it 4 stars. Next, I read Stray by Rachel Vincent. This is the first book in the Shifters series. I enjoyed this. It's an urban fantasy that basically follows a main character named Faith, who is a werecat. So her family are people who can shift into panther type cats. And basically at the start of the story, she has been away for a few years at college because she's been trying to escape kind of the oppressive family nature of the werecats. However, through a circumstance, she has to go back kind of to her family and to the boy who she previously had a relationship with. I found the main character Faith very frustrating. She is supposed to be this sassy, fiery character, but to me, it borders on her just being really immature and stubborn and like not in a good way. However, there was one really shocking moment in this plot that I didn't really see coming, which I enjoyed, and I did enjoy this, but I was hoping for more from this. In the end, I gave this 3.25 stars. I then read Christie's Great Idea by Anne M. Martin. This is the first book in the Babysitters Club series. This is a reread for me. The Babysitters Club was one of my favorite series from when I was a kid. And I really enjoyed this. This one is basically all just about the idea of forming the Babysitters Club. And as an adult reading it, I really realized how much the author tried to put in for kids to relate to. Like we have Christy, who has a single mother. Her father has left the family, is not very involved, and her mother is really trying to support the family. You've got Marianne, who has a single father. Her mother passed away when she was a baby, and her dad's very strict. You then have Claudia, who is, her parents are Japanese immigrants, and they're quite, you know, she's very different from them, and she's got a lot of family expectations. We then have Stacy, who's the new girl in town. She's moved from New York. She doesn't have many friends, and she also has diabetes, so she's dealing with an illness. There's just lots of things in there for kids to relate to, which I really liked, and I really enjoyed rereading this, and in the end I gave it 4 stars. Next on audio, I listened to The Secret History by Donna Tartt. This one actually was narrated by Donna Tartt herself. So this is a novel that is basically about a boy who is at college, and he ends up joining this class where there's only 5 or 6 other students. I think there's 4 or 5 other students, and they're a very small, tight-knit group, and you know from the beginning of the novel that one of them has been murdered, and has been murdered by them. Like, they've killed another one of the boys. You know that from the get-go, and you kind of go back and lead in. The first half of the book is kind of leading in to the death, and the second half is kind of following on from it. This was technically a reread for me. I read this book several years ago. I didn't remember too much about it, except that I didn't really enjoy it. In the first half of the book, I thought I was enjoying it a lot more than the first time I read it, but it just went kind of steadily downhill for me. It is definitely a very pretentious book, I think. I don't like any of the characters. Like, I don't like any of the characters. It's also very slow. I think this book is way too long, like longer than it needs to be. And I don't know, so it was slow in the start, and then you kind of get the main event, and it was a little bit more interesting, and then once the main event happens, it was really slow again. So I just thought the pacing was off. I thought it's too long. I think it's pretentious, but there's still something about it that I generally I think the vibe of the story, like it's set in this, you know, college in Vermont, and it feels like very kind of oppressive, and I did kind of enjoy that type of thing. I don't know, in the end I gave it 3 stars. I feel like maybe it's a little bit generous because I didn't super love it, but I gave it 3 stars. I then read What Doesn't Kill Her by Carla Norton. This is the second book in a duology. And the first book followed a girl who had escaped a captive situation. She'd been held captive kidnapped when she was about 12, I think it was, thereabouts, and had been held captive for several years, being raped repeatedly. And then she ends up escaping, and it's years and years later. She's now an adult, and a young adult, and she gets called in to help another girl who has recently been recovered from a similar situation. That's kind of what the first book is about, and this one kind of follows the events in the first one. I enjoyed this, but for me, I could only give it 3 stars because it was just one of those stories where there were way too many convenient factors in the solving of the mystery. Like, there was just too many. It was just too convenient. Like, they would just stumble upon like these clues that just didn't seem super realistic to me. But I did enjoy it, but I just couldn't give it more than 3 stars. Next, I read Rogue by Rachel Vincent. This is the second book in the Shifters series. Again, I didn't super love this. I did enjoy it. I really enjoy, there's a ship in this that I'm kind of into. I can definitely see that it can be problematic, but I do kind of enjoy it. And I'm kind of interested to see where the romance is headed, because it's kind of, there are obstacles, like it's a 6-book series, so of course there are going to be, so I'm interested to see kind of where it's headed. Again, find the main character pretty frustrating, so I didn't enjoy this one quite as much as book 1, but I did still enjoy it, and in the end I gave this one 3 stars. I then listened on audio to A Constellation of Vital Phenomena by Anthony Mara. This one is narrated by Colette Whitaker. This one is a historical fiction set during the Chechnya War. The thing I liked about this was that it doesn't really follow the war. It more follows the lives, which is, it's not that this is a unique premise necessarily, but I do enjoy it, that it follows the lives of particular individuals and how they are affected by living in this kind of really war-torn area. We basically follow a man who has a friend of his has recently been taken by Russian fighters, and his little daughter is left behind, and so he's trying to protect the daughter, and he ends up taking her to this hospital and asks the female doctor there to take the little girl in and look after her. We're basically following that kind of story. I don't think I connected to this one as much as I would have if I'd read it in physical format, because I did listen to it on audio, but I did enjoy it. I cried. It is a very hard-hitting story. I do think it was beautifully written, and in the end I gave it 3.75 stars. Next, I read Trust by Kate Veitch. This is an Australian novel that is basically about a family, and then some kind of events that take place in the family that kind of, you know, make everyone question everything type of thing. I didn't really love this. I see that I gave it 2.5 stars. I feel like that's a bit generous because I really didn't enjoy it. Trigger warnings in it as well for biphobic and homophobic language, and like talk in there. Didn't like that. The author also put a lot of current event references in the story. However, the story was published in 2010, so it felt very dated. But the things that she put into it felt very unnecessary as well. Like, I didn't think that that needed to be in there. And if it hadn't have been in there, it wouldn't have dated the story so much. I don't know. I don't really know what else to say about this. I didn't really like any of the characters. I just didn't like the story at all. Like I said, I gave it 2.5 stars. Looking back, it's probably more like a 2, but yeah, didn't really like that one. I then read Claudia and the Phantom Phone Calls by Anne M. Martin. This is the second book in the Babysitters Club series. This one I really loved as well. I gave this one 4 stars. This one deals with the trope of babysitters kind of getting scary phone calls. There is a robber, a like jewel thief type of robber who is burglarizing homes, but he calls the houses before he goes. And then if anyone answers, he just like hangs up, trying to determine if anyone's home so that he can rob the house. And it just kind of deals with that type of thing. Very enjoyable. And like I said, I gave this one 4 stars. Next, I listened on audio to Wicked River by Jenny Milchman. This one is narrated on audio by Susie Benet. This is a thriller. It basically follows a newly married couple who you already feel like there's some weird stuff maybe going on. And they go on their honeymoon on this like a camping hiking trip. However, they are not alone in the forest. There is someone else there, and it just kind of deals with that. I really liked the first half of this book. It felt very sinister, very, you know, that just real creepy vibe about it. However, the second half I didn't really like. Trigger warnings in this one for animal cruelty and just violence generally, I guess. There's also I didn't like the second half of it. I didn't like the ending. The whole second half of it was just very not great. There's also a character decision made at one point that made me so mad because it was so unbelievably stupid. I just didn't believe that anyone would ever do that. And that kind of made me mad. So in the end, I did really enjoy the first half though. Like I was really into it. So in the end, I gave this one 3.25 stars. Next, I read Assassin Study by Maria V. Schneider. This is just a little novella in the series. It's book 1.5, but it was published after the original trilogy. I really enjoyed this one. It follows a character that I really, really like. I don't think this was necessary to the series at all. You could easily not read this, but I did enjoy it, and in the end, I gave it 3.25 stars as well. Next, I read What Happened That Night by Sandra Block. This is another one that was a NetGalley read, so thank you to NetGalley. This one is I don't really know how to describe this. I believe it's shelved as a thriller, but it's not really a thriller. It's basically about a woman who, when she was in college, was raped. However, she doesn't have much memory of the actual attack. And then it's several years later, she's still dealing with the aftermath of it, obviously, and a video surfaces online of her attack. And she, for the first time, knows exactly what happened to her, and she knows the perpetrators because it was a gang rape situation. Huge trigger warnings in this, obviously, for rape, sexual violence, and for suicide. I really enjoyed this. I thought it's kind of got a revenge aspect to it, but it's not your typical revenge type thing, which I really, really enjoyed. There's a lot of commentary in there, obviously, on moving on and kind of overcoming this type of thing and getting closure and how to get closure when the perpetrators of your attack haven't necessarily been, haven't been, I don't even know what the word to use is. They haven't been punished, I guess, in the way that they should be. Punished probably isn't the right word, but guys know what I'm kind of getting at. It was a very, very difficult read. Super confronting. It's one of the first books that I've ever read where I had to put it down a couple of times because it was very, very difficult to read. And I say that as someone who doesn't have rape as necessarily a trigger. So, like I said, go in cautiously. But I thought it was really, really well done. And in the end, I gave that one 4 stars. I then moved on to something a little more lighthearted with The Truth About Stacey by Anne M. Martin. This is the 3rd book in the Babysitters Club series. This one was really enjoyable. It follows Stacey, who historically has been my favorite of the babysitters, but I'm really excited once I've reread this series to kind of decide kind of who my favorites are and things like that. I didn't enjoy this one maybe quite as much as the first 2, but I did still really enjoy it, and in the end I gave that one 3.5 stars. Next on audio, I listened to House by Frank E. Peretti and Ted Decker. I believe this was also narrated by Frank Peretti and Ted Decker, and this was my most hated book of the month and possibly my most hated book of the year, but we'll have to see how things kind of wrap up at the end of the year. But I really, really didn't like this book. This is basically a horror thriller that you're following kind of a couple who are driving one day, and they drive across some metal spikes that have been put out in the road, and they end up going to this hotel bed and breakfast type thing, to use their phone and all that type of thing, and to get help. And there is a married couple there with an adult son who are a bit strange, and there's some strange stuff going on at the kind of hotel house, whatever. Oh boy, this book was rough. I didn't like a single one of the characters. The characters were extremely two-dimensional, extremely underdeveloped. The female characters were treated terribly, were terribly portrayed. The adult son of the couple who are at the house has a mental disability. I thought it was disgustingly portrayed. The couple and the son themselves are referred to as inbred constantly, even though there is never any evidence whatsoever that this family is in any way inbred. I'm like, are we just assuming that because they live in the country? Because that's prejudice. There was nothing about this book I liked. It is technically Christian horror. I don't identify as Christian, know that. So I don't particularly go in for that type of thing, but I really didn't think it was done well in this either. There's kind of little mentions of it throughout, but I didn't really pick up on the fact that it was Christian horror until the end. So it felt very kind of tacked on. I didn't think personally that it was handled well. Again, say that as a non-Christian. But I thought this book was terrible. I do not recommend. I really, really hated this book. As I said, 1 star. I then read Watership Down by Richard Adams. This is a classic book that a lot of people have read. We're basically following a group of rabbits who, one of them has had this kind of prophetic thing to know that something really bad is going to happen at the warren that they currently live in. And so a small group of them go off on their own to kind of find a new place to live. And you're just following their adventures. I don't really get this book. It was okay. It was kind of fun. It took me a while to get into. It's very slow. Definitely too long. It's almost 500 pages. I'm also very unclear what the target audience is for this book because I don't see a lot of adults wanting to read a story about a rabbit's adventure, but it's way too long to be a children's book. So I don't really know, but it was just okay for me. I enjoyed it, but I thought it was too long and I didn't super connect to it either, but it was okay, and in the end I gave it 3 stars. And the final book that I read in September was Pride by Rachel Vincent. This is the 3rd book in the series. This one, again, just okay. We get a lot of politics kind of the Pride, which is like the group. There's different prides throughout the United States, different groups of werecats. You get a lot of the Pride politics in this one, and it's very much like a powerful older men politics, which I'm not really that into. So I didn't really love that aspect of it, but there's a new character kind of introduced in this, and the storyline that goes along with that I did really like. Again, I find the main character so frustrating. I get that the author is trying to write a strong female character who stands up to this kind of older men political type situation and is trying to prove that she's a girl and she can do things just as well as the men can, and I'm all for that part of it, but she's such a pain in the ass. Like, she can't listen to reason, which I'm like, you're just immature. You can't see that just because you want different things from them, which is fine, and what she wants is generally what the reader wants, but that the way that you go about it isn't always the best way, and that you don't always need to run your mouth and piss people off and be a brat. She's a brat. I find her extremely frustrating as a character. I do still enjoy this series generally, but it's definitely not fantastic. In the end, I gave this one 3 stars as well. So those are all of the books that I read in the month of September. I hope I got through these quickly. I have no idea how long this took me. I hope that you guys enjoyed. Please let me know down below if you've read any of the books that I've read, or what you guys read in September, how your September reading month going. Did you read any truly terrible books? I would love to know. Please like this video if you liked it. Please subscribe if you want to see more from my channel. But that is all I have for this video today. Bye guys.